My wife is telling me she don't want to have anything to do with the church at all at this time. And she wants to stay a Baptist where she was. And we're going to church every day. And I have to go tell the pastor of the church that I'm going to be converting. You know who the pastor was?
Who's that?
My brother.
Okay. Wow. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in and welcome to another episode of the Priesthood Men podcast, a place where disciples of Jesus Christ gather together and share our testimony, strength, and hope with each other in hopes to build our testimonies and help us all draw nearer to Jesus Christ. Joining us today on the podcast is a pillar of the Latter-day Saint community here in South Florida, someone who has come highly recommended by the saints in his area, and someone that I'm excited to sit down with today and talk to and hear his Latter-day Saint story and where it all began for him. So welcome to the Priesthood Men podcast today, Stan.
Thank you.
So Bishop Brown, where did your Latter-day Saint story begin?
My first encounter began in Miami about 1986.
Okay.
It began with a young missionary knocking on my door. And it was a unique situation. They came to knock on my door 10 minutes before I drove out because I had bought a house and I was leaving. So, but you know, as I look back, and you can't see these kind of things unless you look back and see where you came from. So that young man asked me a few questions. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this guy is kind of weird. He's asking me about God and all this stuff. Now, mind you, at this time, I had not heard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As far as I was concerned, being a Mormon was those guys with the big black hats and the big buckles on their shoes. And I since found out everything's totally different. But at this point, you're talking about a young man in the inner city, and I was a devout Baptist going to church on the weekends, on Sunday. And one of the first questions that young man asked me is, do I know God? And I'm saying, you know what? I go to church all the time. I know, and I'm about ready to get on him because I know who God is, okay, in my opinion.
Sure.
But the bottom line is, I was only going to be there 10 minutes. I was just cleaning up to close up and walk away. Truck's all loaded. Everything's ready to go. And I do just that. He gave me a Book of Mormon. And I opened the back of the truck and I put it in the box, the same box I just cleaned the window sills with and threw the dirty rag in there and everything. I put that Book of Mormon in the same box.
Would it be fair to say that in your mind, you didn't need someone to teach you about God at that stage in your life?
Oh, well, that was my opinion at the time. And just realize this too, I had no intentions of reading the Book of Mormon. None. When I left there, that book was going to be in that box, and I wasn't even thinking about it. Moved to my house here in Fort Lauderdale. One of the unique things happened is that I'm going down Davie Boulevard, going to I-95 first, and I see these elders. And my wife looks at those guys and says, those are the guys that came to visit you in Miami. And I went, no. And she said, those are the same guys. And I said, no, it's not. It couldn't be. Went about, did what we did. Coming back, we saw these guys again. Lo and behold, I didn't know there was a church just on the other side of I-95 that we were working on. And that was one of their main corridors they were going down. So my wife sees them again. And she goes, those are the guys that gave you the Book of Mormon in Miami. I didn't think anything of it. To be honest with you, I kind of brushed it off a little bit and I went on home.
Do you remember anything about impressions that you got about those young men?
None. I'm in a frame of mind that, you know, I don't even know who these guys is. I don't want to have anything to do with them or anything like that. Nothing in my mind like that. Until about, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks after my wife sees them, I get a knock on my door. And it's these two young men. We didn't have much time.
What did you think when they knocked on your door again? So this is the second time now. They had come to your house, and then your wife said, those are the same guys, and now they're knocking on your door again.
They're knocking on my door. I still don't recognize them. Seriously, it was only a 10-minute encounter. I don't recognize them, but my wife does. She says, those are the guys that came and brought the book in Miami. And I said, no way, those are the same guys. And we had this big discord about these guys. And at this point, I'm ready to ask them, okay? But the unique thing that happened while they were there at the house on the second time, he gave me another Book of Mormon. and he signed it. Well, it was signed. Now that I see him signing, it was signed when I got it. During the Discord, my wife says, "Where'd you put that other book they gave you?" And I put it in the shed in the backyard, in the box with a rag and everything I cleaned. So I went and got that book, and sure enough, the same person had signed it. I'm not kidding. Same guy signed it. And I started creating hypotheses of all kinds of things of going on. Because I told him this is not like Star Trek or the Twilight Zone.
So you're trying to figure out a way to explain this, right, in your mind?
And I am. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. What my thoughts were in this case, that they had some guy someplace, and he signed all the books. And he gave these books to these young men, and I ended up with one in Miami and one here. That's the only way I figured that could be the same person.
So there was a main hub where this one specific person would sign all the books, and then they would pass them out to the missionaries, and then the missionaries would give them out.
Yep.
That would explain it.
That was my hypothesis. I had to find a way. I have a very analytical mind.
Sure.
So that is how I figured out this was going to happen, that it did happen. And so now I'm going to go see if my hypothesis was true. And it was totally not true.
Okay.
And what happened was I moved on a Sunday and he moved on a Tuesday. And he moved 6 blocks from where I was. He was 3 blocks from me in Miami. He's 6 blocks from me in Fort Lauderdale. Same guy. Last time I saw him in forever. That second time he gave me the same Book of Mormon. I didn't see him again. I don't even know his name. But I do have a book, not the original Book of Mormon, but the elder that baptized me. I do know who he is. But the bottom line is, when I talked to him the last time and I found out he had just moved 6 blocks from me here and he gave me the second Book of Mormon, again, I got an analytical brain. I'm going, I don't believe in coincidence. It all got to work out. And then I finally actually looked at the cover. Because when I first saw it, I only saw Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon.
I didn't read any further. And then I looked down below. It says, Another Testament of Jesus Christ. And then I went, oh my goodness, I need to open this book. And I did. And in the introduction, it talked about letting the remnants of Israel know that their fathers were not set aside. And to let the Gentiles know that Jesus was the Christ. And it blew me away. When I say that blew me away, realize I've had the Bible in my life all of my life. I started religion early. I think I was only like 8 or 9 years old, and I was in church a lot. So I wasn't estranged to the Bible, but now I had this other thing I had never seen before, and it was different. Now, if you know anyone with an analytical brain, if there's something else that's there that you don't have, you've got to go down the road and explore it. It's just the way it is. Okay, you cannot have something and not see where it is. So again, it prompted me to open the Book of Mormon. And as I read that Book of Mormon, I didn't get all blown away. I had this, how can I explain this? I had this plan that I was going to show them how great the Bible was, you know? And as I started going down that road to show them how great the Bible was, they actually showed me how great the Book of Mormon was. And that was the information I didn't have. But I didn't realize that they already had the Bible too. I didn't realize that. I thought they always had, it was the Book of Mormon. So I'm going to go and teach them what the Bible is all about.
Sure.
Well, that was a fail situation too. They taught me, and I started reading the Book of Mormon, and I started trying to grow from that. Again, with an analytical brain, you start looking at things that are similar. And what I saw was, if you read the Bible, Old Testament or New Testament, doesn't matter which one, it sets out in like a genealogical type of format. It talks about a family, Adam and Eve, and it goes through their sons, and it goes through, this is a family-oriented type of Bible. And then I read the Book of Mormon, Lehi, Nephi, Sam.
You recognize the pattern.
There's a pattern there.
Yes.
And then I looked at, I started getting interesting. I wanted to find the timeline on how this thing it came to be. And then I find out it came to be almost simultaneously. There's no way these guys had this information in America and the Bible was being written someplace else and they had these similarities. I started getting blown away and I started thinking to myself, oh my God, I have to ask him. I got to go to God with this.
Are you feeling the Spirit throughout this process, or is it just analytical? At this point, have you started to recognize promptings from the Spirit that I have to find out more?
At the time, I couldn't identify it. Today, I know it was the Spirit because of the growth that I've had. At the time, I thought it was a thirst of knowledge, just wanted to get more knowledge. But I realized the Spirit was directing me because the morning that I got up and read the Book of Mormon, that fateful morning that my wife was still asleep, I went in my bathroom, I got on my knees, and a lot of people use the bathroom as their altar to God. That was where mine was. And I asked him, is this my direction? I didn't ask him any great questions. Is this where you wanted me to go? And it was simple. If this is where you want me to go, I need to know. And that was the prayer. When I hit that door to open the door to the bathroom, I knew that this was my path to go in. That was not the hard part. The hard part was telling my wife.
Sure. What came next?
That this is my path to go. What came next was me trying to figure out how to tell her. So I did. After a little bit of contemplation, took me about a day. I told her I wanted to talk to her. I have decided to get baptized, and I told her, well, V, I don't know why the Lord's lead me this way, and but I know He is. So I've decided to get baptized, and she shocked me with her answer. Her answer, because again, we're devout Baptists. We're going to a Baptist church, and she's singing in the choir.
Can you speak to that a little bit about what was your religious experience like as a Baptist?
Absolutely. Yes, we're praying daily because that's our daily family prayer. We are praying as a family at the dinner table. We're praying in the morning together. We're praying in the evening together. As a devout Baptist, we pray. And one of the great things is if you want music for the soul, be a Baptist, because you're going to get some music, you're going to get some hand clapping, foot stomping.
Let's go.
You're going to get some music for the soul. It was good.
Couple hallelujahs here and there.
And a couple hallelujahs and amens. We're not short of that. And it was good. I felt the Spirit during the times that we were having that. So again, one of the things that I guess my wife was having trouble with understanding is we're feeling the Spirit. We're living the gospel. We're not doing any of those things that are outside what good people should be doing. Mm-hmm. We're not drinkers. We're not smokers. We're not any of those things, even though we might have had some of that in our past. I've never drank, but my wife has. But the bottom line is we weren't any excessive, and it was very short stint in between, very little. But as our family people, we never brought that in our house. We prayed often, and we followed the scriptures as best we could. So that's where we were. When I told her I was headed on a different path, the shocking answer was the one that made me pause for a minute. Her answer to me was, I don't care what you do. I'm all right with this decision you're making, but just don't include me. He says, I don't want to have nothing to do with him. Okay. And I looked at her and I said, I get it. I am good. So I got baptized.
Just like that, what did you think of Joseph Smith when you first heard about Joseph Smith?
After reading the Book of Mormon, knowing Joseph Smith and his story, not knowing the history, just more the story when it comes to the Book of Mormon, I knew he was a prophet. There's no way, absolutely no way that he could have done this without the Lord's presence. And a lot of people have this issue with Joseph Smith, whatever they're having. I'm looking at the work.
Yes.
And I know this now, even though I knew it by spirit then, is that we have to look at the fruit of what has happened to know where God has walked. Where he walks, there's fruit to be desired. I knew that this Book of Mormon was by God himself. And that's, I think, one of the things that helped me understand that this was my path. Because again, as a Baptist, I was being fed, but I don't think I was being fed at the capacity that I could have been fed or that I needed to. So again, getting back to that story where my wife is telling me she don't want to have anything to do with the church at all at this time, and she wants to stay a Baptist where she was, and she's got a beautiful voice. She's in the choir. We're going to church every day, and I have to go tell the pastor of the church that I'm going to be converting. You know who the pastor was?
Who's that?
My brother.
Okay. Wow. Yes. Well, as you tell that story, I'm reminded of the first vision, right? The first vision wasn't the hard part for Joseph Smith. It was what came next, right? Okay, now that I know this, there's some things I have to do and some people I have to tell. So.
Yeah. It was a surreal conversation, but that's a conversation for a different time. But it was interesting. But getting back to where my wife was and telling her and her giving me her answer and me going ahead and getting baptized and realizing coming out of the water, probably the greatest experience I had in the gospel at the moment. Going to church, being a Baptist, all that is good. But the moment I came out of that water, I knew that this was my path. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't, I believe, it's that I knew this was my path now. And it was, again, feeling that spirit was simply amazing. I did not think that anything could be that amazing as much as I thought as the moment I came out of the water. But I was wrong again, like I've been wrong about everything else moving forward. So,
what is it about you as a person that you were able to get to your baptism? A lot of people will be taught by the missionaries, maybe even read the Book of Mormon, and perhaps even have a spiritual experience with the Book of Mormon, but they're not able to do what you did, which is understand and decide, this is my path. When you said that prayer, you made an agreement with God that if he told you that this was your path, that you would walk that path. How are you able to do that?
It was a lot simpler than a lot of people realize for me. When I got on my knees and I prayed, I had a conversation with God. There is no other conversation is needed once I got my answer from God. Nobody else mattered in this case. It didn't matter what my brother said. It didn't matter what the missionary said. It didn't matter what anyone said. I had a conversation with God. And when I got off my knees, it didn't matter what my wife said at this time. And that's why the conversation was so difficult with her, because regardless of what she said, this was my path because the Lord put me on that path. And it's significant because we often have people, like you say, they feel that spiritual experience and they walk away. They had an experience with God and they turned it away. Well, they let someone talk them out of, like my brother tried to do with me, and we'll have that conversation at some point. But they have this experience and they discount it, and they don't realize that the Lord is leading them. They don't realize that he has work for them to do. And you may not know at the time that he's got this. Now, I look back and I see all the things that I've done and know that he had this work for me. But I couldn't tell you in the moment. All I could tell you is I had that conversation with him, and that conversation was a conversation that led me forward.
Yes.
And after that conversation, no other conversation on that subject even mattered. And it was significant when I say it doesn't matter. I had to go through a lot to get that conversation recognized, that I needed to make sure that is where I stood on every conversation, the one with God. And that's what I actually did.
So that conversation that you had with God was the anchor for everything that happened after that.
Absolutely, because it has to be my anchor. Because if I did not believe that came from God, then I could have been swayed by any and everything. Trust me, if the Baptist can't sway you, no one can, okay? And that is the truth. As a Baptist, I felt like I knew it all. And that's one reason I ended up here, because I started out trying to teach them something and I learned something, because that's the way we envision things. We think we know it all. And as a Baptist, couldn't teach me anything because I already knew it, because I had the Bible. But if you humble yourself and you sit down and you read and you accept those things, and remember, I approach any knowledge, whether it be Bible, scientific book, I have to go in there with my cup empty so that I can fill it. If I go in there with my cup already filled, there's nothing any of these things can do to give me knowledge. If you're a seeker of knowledge, you have to go in there willing to learn. So you have to test things. And that's exactly what I did. I called them over. We went through precepts upon precepts, why the baptism was important. Now, as a Baptist, I learned the baptism was symbolic. As a Latter-day Saint, I learned that it was a commandment. And then I had to go and realize that I had to embrace Christ to know that I had to follow him. Not what these guys were telling me, oh, it's just symbolic. You don't really need it. Well, Christ really did it. So I needed to put that in perspective for me. Is this what Christ really wants? Or I'm going to listen to this guy when he said, follow me. Brad, that is one of the most significant invitations given to man. And a lot of people don't know how powerful the word follow me is. When Christ said, follow me, do as I do, that is so significant that it not only changes lives, it grows men, it solidifies family, because Christ did it. When he said, follow me, he wasn't telling you to do something that was, he wasn't telling you to do something that wasn't what he hasn't already done.
Sure.
So follow him was just something that he was giving us an example to do.
A model.
A model to say. So again, it wasn't hard for me after the conversation I had with God. So I just decided to follow Christ.
Was there opposition?
Oh, you wouldn't believe the opposition. Not only opposition to in my family, but opposition to my people. Trust me, Jordan, becoming a Latter-day Saint was, how could you join that church? You as a black man joining that church, how could that happen? Trust me, I've heard it all. Matter of fact, my brother, our first conversation with him was me giving him a Book of Mormon and telling him, you read it, we have a conversation, let's see how this goes. 2 minutes into the conversation, I realized he didn't read any of the Book of Mormon. He just wanted to tell me how bad the Latter-day Saints are. And I'm saying Latter-day Saints, now at that time we called it being Mormon. And
what did he say?
Well, he just said, first he said something about Joseph Smith that was totally not true, because I've already read the Book of Mormon. And I said, you didn't read the Book of Mormon, did you? He goes, well, no, because you can't unread it once you read it. I said, but you can filter the knowledge. Those are the words he's told me. He says, you can't unread it once you read it. And I said, well, that's fine, but you can filter knowledge. I says, we're not going to have a conversation about my faith if you haven't read the Book of Mormon, because you are coming to this discussion unarmed. You don't know what I know, and you're not willing to learn what I know, so we're not going to have a conversation, because I know what you know. I sat with you in pulpits all over the place. I know what this is about. So the bottom line is we didn't have that conversation. But when you talk about opposition, you got to remember, again, I'm an American with African descent. And this journey that I became a part of, it was a sacred experience. And not only sacred, it was a transformation for me. I mean, when I say a transformation, I mean a total transformation.
How long was the journey from the time that you had that Book of Mormon experience to your baptism?
It was about a year and a half.
Okay, so it's a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So during that year and a half, did you hear all of the common lies and misconceptions
Oh,
and
absolutely.
misinformation. Blacks in the priesthood, Brigham Young was a racist. Those people are never going to. Did you hear about all that
Oh,
stuff that people are being
absolutely.
told right now?
Absolutely.
How did you, for an African Latter-day Saint or a person who may be investigating that is hearing those things, how were you able to take that next step forward when so many people who you trusted, right, maybe on some level, your brother, your community of Christian people that you worshiped with, those things being told to you by people that you loved and trusted?
This was a unique situation. This story, when I've gotten all that information, like you said, Brigham Young was racist, the church didn't like black people, I got all that stuff. And then, again, as I told you, I have an analytical brain. I went and I looked for myself. And I started looking, I realized what was happening with the priesthood and everything. And then I did what most people should do. I talked to God.
What a great idea.
I talked to God. I brought it to him plain. I'm not one of those guys when me and the Lord has a conversation. I don't sugarcoat it. I get right down and, Lord, is this man a racist? Tell me where I'm to go. It's the first time I think I've ever experienced being spanked by God.
Wow.
I got so chastised by God, it was not funny. And you ever see the child that really got in trouble for something that he did, and now he remembers everything he did, knowing that I'm not doing that again?
Yeah.
That's the way.
This guy.
Yeah, that's the way the Lord treated me in that case. I got such a chastising, and I'm going to summarize it for you a little bit, paraphrase it. He said, you don't get to choose who I put in place. I choose those people. He said, Brigham Young was there because without Brigham Young, I would not have had the church and you would not be doing this work. He said, that is my answer and that's all that I'm going to do. And you know what? I left that alone because I had never been chastised by. And I'm not talking about simple and easy. I'm talking about I've done my research. I've done my reading. I've got this stuff out there and I'm praying about it. And let me tell you something. I know what it feels like to be chastised by the Lord, okay? Because it was as simple as he's who I picked, and you need to know my church is built on what he has done. And without him, you wouldn't be sitting here asking me anything because the church wouldn't have existed without Brigham Young. And that's all I need to know to move forward. So I'll say this again, once you have a conversation with God, on any issue, that issue has been put to rest. It does not matter what anyone says, does not matter what anyone does. I can show them my research and what I had to do to get there, and I still keep it. I can show them my research and show them how I got there, but the bottom line is, once that issue was put to rest, I'm not an apologist. I'm not a defender. But I'll tell you how my research, I got there. Other than that, you can make your own decision on how you're going to get there. But I would suggest no matter what research you get on your knees and you talk to God and let him settle the issue because that's what I did.
That's what started the restoration, right? James chapter 1, verse 5. I see so many parallels between your conversion experience and what happened with Joseph Smith and Nephi too. He said that I went forward not knowing beforehand the things that I would do. And that's exactly what you said.
I smile right now. I know that chapter and verse of the gospel. I know James. And at the time, I didn't associate those things as being the same thing. If you lack wisdom, ask of God, he gives to you liberally. I didn't associate that at the time. All I associated with is I needed to pray about those things, which was very significant because the next chapter in my life was because of the gospel in my life. Because about 7 months, and I'm gonna say between 7 and 9 months, I don't know the time frame, I got a call at work about my wife who asked me at the time to baptize her about 7 to 9 months later. And I didn't even know she was taking lessons. I had no idea she was taking lessons. It stunned me, and I came home and I looked at her. I said, where'd this come from? She goes, All right, I didn't want to admit it, but I saw you and what change had happened in you, and I started asking questions again. And so the missionaries came over and taught me. But I want you to get where this is. Because of the change in me, she felt like she wanted to know a little bit more about the church. And then my wife shared that with my mom. And my mom wanted to know a little bit more about the church. And so it went on from there, and it was so unique. So my mom called me up, and we talked a little bit, and I got her in touch with the missionaries. And I got to baptize my wife and my mom on the same day.
What changed? What did they see?
You're going to have to ask them, because I felt like I was praying in my home, following the gospel, but I think it may be the spirit that I gained in a different way, because I started being, I guess, more Christ-like. I don't know what to say, but that was her explanation to me of why she wanted to change. She goes, I saw such a change in you.
Interesting.
And I feel like I'm the same guy
Sure.
that she married. But
Well, that's we all do, right? We are us, right? And so
Yeah.
it's hard to notice a change in ourselves, but people from the outside often will be able to see something that we can't see.
Yes. And so she told me that I wear my faith on my shoulder. And she said, I would hear you talk to your brother about the Book of Mormon, and you would be so excited, or you'd be like, you'd talk to your mom about the Book of Mormon, and you'll be doing this and you'll be doing that. She said, you wear your faith on your shoulder. You don't back up from anyone. You're willing to defend that which you believe. And I corrected her. I said, I don't defend anyone. I just tell them what I believe. They can do what they want to do. I said, and that's me. I'm a simple guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to rush and convince anyone. I will give you what I have, or why I'm where I am. You can accept it or reject it. I'm going to be okay with that, because you're making a conscious decision. But if you want to know, I'm happy to tell you.
Amen. So you were just started to tell me that you baptized your mom. Is that what you said?
On the same day I baptized my wife.
Okay. So where are you at as a priesthood man at that point? You've received the Aaronic priesthood. You've received the Melchizedek priesthood at that point?
I have received the Melchizedek priesthood at that point.
Have you had any callings yet in the church? What is your involvement? Are you on the inside, or are you kind of just sitting in the back, taking sacrament and leaving after the first hour? Or what is your worship like at this point?
For me, worship is at home with family home evening. Worship is reading your scriptures in the morning. Worship is praying in the morning.
So you went all in?
All in. Matter of fact, our family home evenings were crazy. I have 8 kids. Okay. So our family home evening is crazy. We would have, I can remember having family home evening where we would have I don't know if you've ever done this, but we have a style of music and a type of dance. We would put styles of music in a hat, in a type of dance, in a hat, like ballet, break dancing, whatever, jazz, whatever, tap dancing. We would put all these styles of dance in a hat. And 2 of our family members would have to pick each out. So it would say if my son Daniel picked out that we would have rap music on there, good, clean gospel rap music. And then I would pick out of the hat ballet. We would have to do ballet to rap music. So we had this, it was crazy. And then we did all this. So if you can see some crazy things when it come to family home evening, this is what jailed our family. It took us to a whole new level where you may have 1 or 2 people eating dinner, 2 more people coming in and eat dinner. Instead of having everyone at the table at the same time eating dinner, it made us stronger as a family. A lot of the programs in the church made us stronger as a family. Some of the young men's program, the young women's program. Remember, I've got 8 kids, so they're in both programs. So I'm working with both programs, and it solidified us as a family. It helped my wife understand the need for the gospel in the family. So my gospel walk was at home, but as you were alluding to more at the church level, So at this time, I'm in the young men's program. I'm a scout master. I'm doing all that I can do to keep my boys engaged and my family engaged. My wife is in young women, or she's in primary doing the things that she's doing. So we're keeping our family engaged. So I'm holding what callings come. And again, I'm like anyone else. I do as much as I can. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I do pretty good. But I try to filter it all through the lens of the gospel, and we go forward. But I've had many, many, many callings in the church. I don't think, oh, gee whiz, I've had just about all of them. You can have the ward level, a lot of them at the stake level. It is what it is. High priest. I had, I guess, the high council. I was on that for quite a while. Stake Young Men's president. I've had a lot of them. Bishop, yeah, which is a state calling.
Did you ever, through all this time, and I would like to hear a little bit about the day that you baptized your wife and mom, but before I ask you that, did you ever feel outcast as a priesthood holder with African descent did you ever feel like people looked down on you or tried to separate you from the crowd? Because we hear that people have this experience a lot where they come in and they just don't feel comfortable or welcomed by the other men in the church.
For me, in the beginning, I had some issues with members in the church, but once I had that conversation with God, as I say, that didn't bother me as much as it bothered my mom.
How can we help a person who may be having that experience right now?
Well, let me just tell you experience with my mom. She came into the church, and she was in Relief Society, and they had this one sister that, now let me give you a background on my mom so you can understand why this is so offensive to my mom. My mom was an entrepreneur. My mom owned 3 businesses. She owned a beauty salon in Miami, which was one reason I lived in Miami, helping her operate that. She owned some retail shops in Palm Beach County. My dad owned his own company, so we weren't poor, so to speak. We had all the things that we needed. But when we got to the ward here, it was like they assumed that we were. And it was not very nice about the way they portrayed this. And my mom had to look at this one sister and say, "Sister, you need to understand something. I didn't come asking for anything. I'm not here to receive anything except God. So I would appreciate it if you didn't really allude to that. The only reason we're here is to receive something in the way of good." She goes, "I don't need any of them things. I have all of my own." And it didn't stop at her just about. It was even to the point where they came to my mom's house and they were trying to see what they could give to her to help her do all these things. And she says, "Listen, that's pretty offensive. Just know that we're good. We didn't come asking. We're good. If you want to wait till we ask, it would be okay." But it would be a constant thing where they would try to give her clothing and stuff like that. And she would say, "I don't really need anything. I'm here to help." She got to a point where she was offended to a point where she didn't feel comfortable. So I kind of worked with her quite a bit in bringing the gospel to her house when I came to the house. And I had permission to give her sacrament while I was there. So she basically stopped coming for a while. It had a little bit to do with medical and a little bit to do with the fence the fence made it easier for her not to come to church. Let me put it that way. But yeah, there was a time when that is the case with me. Because I had that conversation with God, I want to say I'm not offendable. That does not mean you can't hurt my feelings. That just means you're not going to separate me from God.
Right.
Does that make any?
Absolutely.
Okay. There are times people will say things that will give you pause. And I've had those issues that will cause you to say, "What am I doing here?" And I've had those issues. But then I come back to the point where I had a conversation with God on an issue, and no person on this side of heaven will stop me from moving forward and separate me from God. So, and it was about discovering the purpose, the power, the peace through Christ along this way that I'm on. That was one of the purposes of me focusing on the focus that I've had. So again, even though those offenses would come, and they didn't know they were offending, they thought they were doing things that were Christ-like. The best way I could say that, because they thought they were doing what was the need to do. Mm-hmm. And I've only learned that during the time that I became bishop, and realizing that those keys are important. And if anyone who held keys to the priesthood, elders quorum, bishop, keys
Stake
that were
president,
loaned,
sure.
stake president, even keys that are loaned,
Sure.
even
Relief
keys,
Society president.
Yep, all those, when you utilize keys under the bishop, if you understand that, you realize that those keys are for very purposeful things. Matter of fact, I'm gonna drop a name here. I want you to make sure we understand. I learned that from President Oaks. And President Oaks, when he gave me the half-hour teaching he gave me, was one of the most powerful things. And that was one of the things that he made sure that I understood about those keys to the priesthood, and understanding how they are to be used, especially as a bishop. So in my purpose, understanding the power and getting the peace through Christ, I realized that in my journey, even though I had to deal with those people of color who thought that I should not belong to the church, and those people who belong to the church to think I should be in a certain box, so to speak, or I was focused on that certain box, I had to realize that I have witnessed miracles along the way to know that they only built my testimony. They didn't take away from it. My testimony grew because of those things that were in it. And so when I say I'm blessed beyond my understanding, I know the Lord brought me through certain things, because I could have simply said, I'm done with this, I'm going back to where I belong, and that was it. But that's not what I did, because of the conversation I had with God. And the priesthood that I bear. Holy priesthood has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. And when I say the greatest privileges of my life, I've been able to bless my family beyond my understanding again. It taught me the real power through humility, compassion, and service. That priesthood that I have is just simply been amazing. And when I say amazing, I've seen things that if you don't know God has his hand in it, you got to be blind. And even the blind would realize God had his hand in it. If you were deaf, even the deaf would know that God had his hand in it.